Welcome one, welcome all, to a video I really wasn't sure I'd be making. It was really down to the minute on this game whether or not I was gonna get it. But the embargo lifted, I watched plenty of reviews myself, and well, here I am now, giving my initial impressions with just a little over 20 hours of gameplay on the game. Now, I'll give the short and sweet of it, and in my opinion, it matches up with what I've seen a lot of people say. If you like the first Outer Worlds, you'll love Outer Worlds 2. If you like Fallout New Vegas, I think this is really a game that you will love. This is a love letter to Fallout New Vegas. At least in my first 20 to 25 hours, that's what I got from this. It is absolutely just a love letter. They studied Fallout New Vegas, and they shamelessly pulled any and just about every idea from Fallout New Vegas, including the radio. So that's my short answer. Now for the long answer. So if you're here for the full initial impressions I have of the Outer Worlds 2, well, grab your drink, grab your coffee, your snacks, whatever you got, and let's get right into it. So I want to kick things off with building your character from the beginning. And basically right off the bat, it's going to have you choose a background. You're going to choose traits, skills, things like that to start off with. It's really a lot like Fallout New Vegas in this sense. It's funny because it's similar enough to the first Outer Worlds in many ways, and it's still the same world and everything, but enough RPG mechanics here have been changed and pulled from New Vegas to really just make this feel like a perfect blend of the Outer Worlds is still the Outer Worlds here, but a lot of the mechanics are improved upon by studying Fallout New Vegas. So again, you're gonna start off picking your background, and I chose Professor. And in my experience, this game actually really utilizes your background, like a really good amount. There is a lot of dialogue where my background and my traits come into play. And when you go to pick your traits, something I really like is that you can pick one or you can pick two, but then it gives you a debuff. And I went with actually taking two traits. I almost didn't, but I went back and I was like, no, I'm gonna take two. And I'm glad I did that because it basically gives you a third trait, which is your debuff. But that debuff also can be used in dialogue. Like, it's an actual part of your character. They let you use it in dialogue and everything to get unique dialogue. It's really interesting how much they use your background and your traits. Like, I have my background again is Professor. My traits are Brilliant, Lucky, and Sickly. And I've used the Professor background in dialogue like really often, at least within the first region, because that's mainly what I've done so far is just explore that first region. I've used my Professor background in dialogue a lot. I've used the Sickly trait in dialogue a fair amount, and that's the debuff trait that I picked. So I was very surprised to see that these were things that get incorporated. Now, one of the traits I picked was called Brilliant, and this trait allowed me to pick one additional specialized skill. And specialized skills start with 2 more points. But there's something more to it than that. When I was getting into the game and started leveling up, I realized only your specialized skills can go above your character level in points. So say I'm level 4, only the specialized skills I have can go over 4 points into that skill. So I thought that was a really interesting way, again, of making use of things where you choose right from the start. Things you choose from the start really seem to matter to at least some degree in this game. Not to the point where, you know, it's life or death of your whole entire build, but at least you feel the impact while playing, at least up to the point that I've played. Now, speccing your character out has 2 effects, one in dialogue, one in gameplay, and not just gunplay, but exploration and getting into things and all the like. But I want to dive into dialogue more so, because as an Outer Worlds 1 fan, even I can acknowledge the fact that the Outer Worlds 1 really went soft on you in terms of locking you out of things or being okay with just not letting you access certain parts of the game your first time around. It let you kind of be a jack of all trades a little too easy. And so far in The Outer Worlds 2, it really feels like this has been addressed. Again, so far. Do keep in mind throughout this video that this is my initial impressions of my first 20 to 25 hours, not my final verdict kind of video. But as I was saying, I have spec'd basically into no speech. I am not a charismatic character in the least. I made my person intentionally just like a nerdy, science-y, engineer kind of guy. I'm all science stuff and engineering. So a lot of times in dialogue, I don't get my way because I have literally nothing spec'd into speech. But what I really appreciate about this game, again, speech checks aren't just for speech. There's plenty of other routes to go. So if I'm talking to an engineer, then I can use my expertise in that dialogue. It really uses context, and it just feels like the game has some self-awareness of who you're talking to and what kind of person they are, and it makes it feel more like they have their own character. And it also makes you feel like you have your character depending on how you build them out. It really makes you feel like you built a certain type of character. It feels like I built a nerdy scientist know-it-all that is sickly and weak. And I really enjoy that because that sickly trait that I told you I got as a third trait, as a kind of debuff for taking 2 traits, that isn't just a dialogue factor. That is a gameplay factor. And this is where we get a little bit more into the gameplay side of things with what you spec into and such. Because I have sickly, I have less base health and I have less of a threshold until I crash from toxicity. Now, toxicity is a new mechanic that The Outer Worlds 2 brought in to kind of make the gameplay feel more balanced compared to The Outer Worlds 1. The Outer Worlds 1's gameplay compared to this, The Outer Worlds 1's gameplay, the AI weren't that great. It was very, very simple, kind of just barely serviceable gameplay of or gunplay, I should say. When you get into fights, you could spam your medical inhaler and yada yada. They really took it upon themselves to balance out the combat and make it feel more like an actual fight with tension and stuff when you're in a combat scenario. So basically, you have a certain amount of toxicity you can handle before you have a crash. And every time you use your medical inhaler, it gives you some of this toxicity, which then drains over time while you're healing. Basically, what this is doing is preventing you from being able to spam that medical inhaler. So now what happens is you either wait for that bar to drain, or if you do spam it, you then have a toxicity crash, which basically disables you from being able to use the medical inhaler for X amount of time. However, you can up your threshold on this by leveling up your medical skill. So basically, right now, at the beginning of the game, I could only take 1 medical inhaler before I had to wait for it to drain some to take another while in combat, because otherwise I would crash and then I couldn't use it again. But if I level up my medical enough, I can actually afford to use the medical inhaler twice without even having to wait for it to drain. This mechanic alone, again, creates so much more tension in the combat, outside of the fact that now the combat is just genuinely good feeling. I mean, guns feel great. I've gotten some pretty interesting weapons by this point. It's still similar-ish with modifying weapons, where you basically throw on these mods to do different elements of damage, and when you throw those on, it might lower the base damage some, but in turn you do status effect damage over time. And so I've had assault rifles, I've had SMGs, pistols, revolvers, triple barrel shotguns, and they're all really cool. And then I've had different elements on them, whether that be shock, incendiary, and that's pretty much all the ones I've gotten so far, but I'm sure there's like other elements in the game to use. And then melee weapons feel good, even though I'm not really spec'd in for anything like that. But yeah, those feel good as well. I mean, the combat just feels infinitely better. It's hard to really put into words. It's just kind of you play and you understand it. The AI seems a lot smarter in this game. They don't just kind of stand there if you shoot them from a certain distance. They notice you, they will get into cover, they will fight. And then on top of that, something I found that's kind of interesting, it's not super apparent, it's not a crazy big part of the game, but certain pieces of structure will break when an enemy is firing. So like I was taking cover behind this little fence kind of thing, and there was a metal sheet in front of it, and when they shot it enough, the metal sheet broke and then I was not in cover anymore. So things like that were really interesting to me. And while we're in the flow of talking about combat, they switched up the time dilation as well. I mean, tactical time dilation itself still works the same, but it is now a part of this mechanic where it is a gadget and you can get other gadgets. So you don't just have tactical time dilation anymore. I did a quest and got this one gadget called a gas energy deflection apparatus, and this is basically a shield that you can activate for yourself, and it helps to either deflect damage. It basically, well, absorbs damage and then it goes away as it takes more damage, or it helps me in areas filled with what is called Zeranium. And Zeranium is basically the equivalent of like radiation in Fallout, where it's this toxic thing, and if you stand in it too long, you die. And basically this apparatus helps you to last longer in that, so you can sprint through it quick without taking a ton of health damage or anything. I've found that stealth is actually a fairly large component to this game. I mean, you don't have to spec into it, but I've definitely found parts where it would be nice to have some stealth to sneak around. Instead, I kind of went guns blazing and did it that way, but there are options, and stealth can definitely be used in this game a decent amount. And my point with this is that there is also a gadget called Auntie's Acidic Dematerializer, and when you use this, it'll actually decompose the body so that the body can't be found. Because yeah, that's also a mechanic in the game, where if you kill someone else can find the body and be like, oh, hey, what's going on here? And, you know, start looking for you, and then everybody's on alert. So this is something that gets rid of the corpses. Speaking of accessories while in combat, there's also plenty of throwable weapons as well, such as a distraction device that just makes a noise to get the enemy to be distracted while you're stealthing through an area, or there is a biomass grenade, which basically does like this acid corrosive damage. There's smoke grenades in the game, there's explosive regular grenades, there's Zeranium grenades, which again is basically like radiation from Fallout kind of thing. So there is plenty of ways to go about combat in this game. So how you spec your character affects the routes you can take in dialogue, and how you spec your character can affect the routes you can take in combat. Whether that's stealthing and avoiding combat or going into combat, there's numerous routes within that. And on top of that, how you spec your character affects exploration. When I play Fallout or any RPG like this, the one thing I can't stand is a door that I can't open. And so I went the route of basically being able to open any door I want. I spec'd into hacking, lockpicking, engineering, and all the like. And all these are things you can use in exploration to help you get around. You'll find doors that are stuck, and you use your engineering to fix them basically and get them working again, hacking to open up things like safes or doors or whatever, open up a terminal to get some nice juicy info. And that's the other thing. You're speccing into how you access things through exploration and gameplay can directly affect your dialogue. There is not just skill checks in your dialogue. There are plenty of times when I've gone into dialogue with somebody and it says something like required info missing or something like that. And basically what it's saying is I could go around and talk to somebody or find some piece of lore somewhere in a terminal or in an audio log, and that can also help me get through some dialogue that I might want to be able to get through a certain way. So not only does this game respect how you build out your character, but it respects your time in the sense of if you want to take the time to read terminals and look through every little thing, it'll respect your time in that sense. A lot of times it comes to benefit you. And yeah, this is still the Outer Worlds, so there is tons of reading to be done in this game. They did add, as I just mentioned, audio logs, so occasionally it does break it up for you, but there is still tons and tons of reading if you're into that kind of thing. With The Outer Worlds 1, I highly recommend it to people that if you are going to play it, that you be willing to sit down and read through terminals, because there is a lot of interesting info and a lot of great background to the world, and I think it just makes the game infinitely better storytelling wise. So I do still recommend with The Outer Worlds 2 that you be down for some reading. Now, when I watched interviews and stuff, I heard people talk about the game being very reactive to things you do. I've yet to see that a ton here. I do have an instance of where I honestly couldn't help but laugh because I was out front of this base with some people. No spoilers here. I won't say what, who, or what, or anything, but there was a crate of automechs, and basically there was like a control panel thing, and I interacted with it and it said I could open it, and I'm like, okay, like what's in this? I open it and let them out, and they ended up getting killed. And then later on I come to find out by reading a terminal that was stuff that was ordered by these people, and basically they wanted to get them up and running by X date, otherwise these people would be in big trouble. And then later on I come to find these people getting executed because I let these things go. So basically these people ended up being executed because they couldn't get their job done. I was like, oh my god, wait, this is happening because I just opened a crate randomly without knowing what it would do? Like, holy crap. So I've yet to see in the bigger picture any kind of reactivity to things I've done, probably because I'm not far enough along yet, but that was honestly a really cool moment for me to see, despite, you know, people getting executed. Again, I know I said I have like 20 to 25 hours, and that sounds like a decent amount of time in a game, but I pretty much spent all of that time in the first region you start the game in. I did side quests and exploring, and that's another thing for exploration. The maps are much bigger this time around, so there is a decent amount to explore. When it comes to the radio in The Outer Worlds 2, they call it the wireless, and this thing is awesome. It's all original music made specifically for this game, and it's essentially like just propaganda for all the corporations and stuff, very fitting to the world and everything. It's like really awesome, very vibey. I could just, it really does, when I turn this thing on, it really gives me Fallout vibes. It's so cool. I love it. And if I could cap off my thoughts on The Outer Worlds 2, at least with my first 20 plus hours impression, I'd say that it doesn't reinvent the wheel or anything, but it brought back a shiny new feeling on something I haven't had a shiny new feeling on in a long time. I've played good RPGs, plenty of good RPGs. I played Baldur's Gate 3. I absolutely adore that game, like literally one of my favorite games of all time. But Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3 are some of my favorite RPGs ever, and I haven't had an RPG do what they did in that same vein of genre and basically just copying their formula. And I am so okay with people taking notes from those two RPGs. The only thing I left out, which I can't comment on a ton yet, is companions. The companions are similar to how they work, at least as far as I've seen, in The Outer Worlds 2 to The Outer Worlds 1. You can take two of them with you, and I only have two right now. I don't have anybody to switch through yet. I have noticed in certain situations that it really lets me, like if I want to ride off of my companion's dialogue, it really lets me do that. However, I haven't done much in terms of speccing and all this other stuff, playing around with what I can do with the companions. I really haven't touched upon that a ton yet, so that's kind of an area that I don't have a ton to say about. I almost forgot to mention performance, which is kind of important since this is an Unreal Engine game and we have had a not so great recent history of Unreal Engine games. I mean, just history in Unreal Engine games in general with performance has been an issue. And my PC is not the best tell because I have a pretty strong PC with a Ryzen 7 9800 X3D for the processor, and then a 9070 XT for the GPU, and 64 gigabytes of RAM. Now with that being said, I put everything on very high. I hung around like 60 frames. I did dip under, especially in the open world. Not like a ton, but I noticed that I would dip under. So then I threw everything down to high, and now I get like 100 frames. So I wouldn't say this is the best optimized game, but I also wouldn't go as far to say it's Borderlands 4 bad optimization. The minimum required GPU is saying a 1070, but I don't know, I definitely would not think it would run that great. That's probably like hinging on 30 frames, maybe at like all low settings with like, I don't know, some like FSR or something running. But I'd say if you have like a 2070 Super with Steam's recommended processor, which is an AMD Ryzen 5 5600X or Intel Core i7-10700K, I'd say that stuff you'd be probably okay to play this game on lower graphics settings, but I would definitely check out some other channels for that kind of info. As for my issues with the game, problems I've had, anything like that, I've had no crashing, I've had no stuttering, I've had no performance issues whatsoever. Really, the only thing I would say performance-wise is an issue is depending on your build and how much frames you're going to get, but again, I would watch a tech channel for that kind of stuff. As for issues I have with the game, I know this sounds really unrealistic, but I don't have any yet. I mean, this isn't my final verdict, kind of like final thoughts, you know, like laminated thoughts on the game. This is just my initial impressions. Again, I only went through the first region, did the entire kind of quest line for that and a bunch of side quests. I personally haven't really ran into anything where I'm like, wow, I don't like that, or that's annoying. I'm sure there will be things I run into that I, you know, come up with that I'll have issues with or whatever, but as of right now, I'm really just enjoying my time with the game. I suppose you could say I'm kind of in my honeymoon phase with The Outer Worlds 2 right now. So I do highly recommend checking out other people's reviews, people that probably got further than I did at this point. Curious to hear what y'all think about The Outer Worlds 2. Let me know, let me hear it all down below. What are you doing with this game? Are you getting it, ignoring it, getting it on sale? Curious to hear it all. Appreciate y'all for coming through. If you like the video, you know what to do. If you like the channel, check out more of my videos, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.